Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Hey, Mike, how are we?
I'm doing fantastic. It was such a dignified, hey, Mike.
Well, I'm laughing just because, we've been talking about doing this series on dignity. So this is the first of 3 parts. And there's just going to be some exciting dramatic tension through this entire 3-part series, because I believe, as you have said, I don't get it. So this is material both of you and both of us have dealt with, and it hit home for me more than you. So I'm going to give you my presentation of what I got out of this, and we're going to see if you see anything that you like.
Well, no, and I appreciate that, because I truly want to be on board with dignity.
You think that sounds like a great idea to?
Yeah. You hear about dignity and respect, and you think, I like those things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, and hats off to you for having the ability to take a book and some presentations and stories from your own life and to meld it all together into this wonderful presentation. I'm excited to learn something and see, okay, what is the piece that I'm missing in all this? Because I know that it's powerful. I know it's powerful for people to talk about. I know it's powerful for people to live, and I just need to get better at it.
Well, full disclosure, you haven't seen this presentation, and maybe it's complete schlock. So, hey, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here that you may be right. But anyway, we'll go through this and see what you think. And for those of you that are listening by audio, I'll try to give a description, because we're going to on the YouTube channel show some slides as we talk through this. So I'll try to bring people up to speed as we go here. Let the record show that I am now displaying a picture of a Twix bar, just a standard candy bar here.
Yeah, not the left or the right Twix, just the right.
Somebody always says that, Mike. Every time I've done this presentation, somebody brings up left and right Twix. Yep. But I've also got a question up here underneath the picture of the Twix bar, which is, what's it worth? And when I show that to you, what's the first thing that comes into your head?
Well, it's worth, depending on how hungry I am, I think it would vary. So if I'm truly hungry, it's worth $1 million. If it's the 7th Twix bar I've had this hour, nearly as valuable to me. And then the monetary part of me says, I don't know, I haven't bought one lately, but it's probably $1.25.
Right. So we could talk about the dollar value, and we could talk about the relative value depending on your hunger. And what strikes me is that no matter how hungry you are, eventually that Twix is going to wear off. And so there's going to be a limited shelf life, if you will, of the value of the Twix bar, right? I mean, at the most 5 minutes of pleasure, maybe 30 minutes to an hour of keeping your stomach, calm down while you wait for the next actual meal. But it's a limited time value. Fair enough?
Well, I think you're underestimating Twix regret. So then there's that. After the hunger, there's the happiness piece, and then the hunger satisfaction. All that wears off, and now I'm left with regret. That
what did I do to myself?
Yeah, I didn't have the willpower to withstand the Twix onslaught, and I devoured the thing, even though I'm trying to eat healthier.
Fair enough. All right. Well, with that being said, let me show another picture. So I've got a lovely pickup truck here. I got a limited edition F-150. What's it worth?
If I need to get my boat to the lake, it's worth $1 million. If I need to get to point A to point B, it may not be the most economical way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to spend, I guess, if we're being really conservative, maybe you get a work truck for 28 grand. It goes up considerably from there, depending on your luxury level and your sport package and all that. it's just interesting because that's the dollar value, but you're boiling it down to utility again, right? And that utility is eventually going to wear off, right? I mean, vehicles will eventually rust or outlive their usefulness to some degree. Transportation, hauling capabilities, looking good, all that those are all valuable things that it offers, but it eventually wears off. So decades, Twix bar 5 minutes, truck maybe decades. Fair enough.
Yeah, a good 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, sure. So now I'm going to show a diploma here, and imagine this has your name on it instead of your name here. What's a diploma been worth to you?
Well, the diploma, it's one of those things that it's hard to put a price on, even though I know there are studies that show that people with degrees and without degrees, there's a lifetime wage gap, lifetime earnings gap, and things like that. For me, the diploma was priceless from the standpoint of in our particular family, both my mom's side and my dad's side, no one in our family had ever earned one. And so it became this huge stepping stone, just in our family pride, that somebody was able to go out and finally make that happen. So from that point, it was priceless.
And I have a similar feeling about the pricelessness of it in that, friends, how it formed me as a person, the network I've developed, and just how it changed me and improved me. Let's put it this way. I'd call it a lifetime of value, because as long as I'm alive, I'm going to have that network of friends. I'm going to be that different person. I'm going to be that person like you who gets to say, I was the first. So at the very least, we could say a lifetime of value. Now, I think this next picture, I've got sort of a probably a father and a son here in a picture, playing a game together, playing ball or something. And now I'm talking about not just a thing. Now I'm moving into time itself, quality time with your family. Now, how would you put a price on that compared to the diploma? What's this worth?
Right. Now we're at the point where money is no object.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that, one of the big takeaways from the pandemic was that people figured out that they valued time with family. They experienced, time, extended time, with family, and they kind of like those folks.
Yep.
And many of them aren't going back. I think there were 4 million people last quarter that quit their jobs to go find other opportunities. So, and I think a lot of that stems around, the opportunity to have just these kind of moments.
Yeah. And doesn't that really put into perspective the financial side of this, right? The pickup truck is worth tens of thousands of dollars. People will sacrifice their whole salaries to figure this one out and achieve more of that quality time. So now let me dial it in just one step further. I'm going to go enough down this road to say that if I'm investing in that youngster, the value now, time-wise, goes after my death. So the diploma lasts at least a lifetime. Investing in somebody else, this youngster, is going to have an impact for the next generation, perhaps. And whatever that impact is, it's going to go on beyond after I'm dead if that person's still alive, right? And so now I'm going to just drill down one step further, and let the record show. This is a picture of my youngest when she was first born. That's my hand. So there's my hand. And she just had this tiny little preemie head. She was 6 weeks early. And I could literally just cup my whole hand over the top half of her head. So now we're talking about the person itself. What's it worth? And I can tell you, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the financial one, because she was a preemie, 10 grand more than all my other kids.
Right.
Straight off the top.
And I'd hold that over her the rest of her life.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Every time, she talks back, doesn't pick up her room. listen, I paid 10 grand more for you. I have higher expectations. I'm going to need a little bit more from you. So
That's right. That's right. So, and obviously we're being a little silly there, but the question is, what is it worth? And
right. So I think what you're asking here is, what is a human life worth?
Yeah.
And yeah, there is no price.
Right. We already said priceless for the diploma, and now we're saying really priceless, right?
Yeah. Super priceless.
Super priceless.
Yeah. Times infinity.
There is an ancient Greek connection here. If you read Plato's Republic or some other things from that era, Plato had this big thing about do things change? And if they changed, then you weren't looking at the really real thing. So just an almost silly example, but say you see a tree growing in your yard. Well, that tree is not real in the same way as, say, a math problem. And the example here would be the tree is going to continue to change. It's going to double in size and then quadruple in size, right? So it's becoming something different. Eventually, it'll become dust again. It'll grow and it'll die and it'll rot and go back to the earth. Well, it's constantly changing, but what hasn't ever changed is that doubling. Times 2 will always mean times 2. The quadrupling, times 4, will always mean times 4. And so for him, the things that are eternal are what's really important. Those things that don't ever change. And so, for us today, we could look at it as there's a soul here. There's something that's going to last after this kid grows up and even dies. There's something here about this that's got a touch of the infinite to it. And so it's fair to say, if you can follow my logic there and say that that's eternal in a way that other things aren't. The diploma is not going to be eternal. It's gonna have a shelf life, just like the truck and the candy bar. But that thing that we're looking at there's something eternal about it. And eternal, infinite, same thing as saying priceless. It's hard to measure its worth.
No, that's I think you're right, and I like how you always there's always an ancient Greek connection here. I've noticed.
Oh, there is every time,
which I really like as well. So if it's infinitely priceless, how does this tie us all back to dignity?
So what I want you to do is underneath my hand there, where you see that face, I want you to stick another face. Let's pick on somebody. How about John Wolfe, our fabulously sarcastic voiceover artist who introduces us and says goodbye to our 3 fans. If I stuck John's face up there, sarcastic, curmudgeonly John's face, or pick somebody in your organization, folks at home, right? The person that's seen as the bully, or the person that's difficult to deal with, or the boss that's a problem, or the owner that's a problem. Put somebody's face up there that's a little disagreeable to you. Has anything at all changed about that equation of how much that soul is worth?
Absolutely not. What does change in the workplace, and I'm sure this is where we may be going, is how we treat that person.
Right.
Even though the value remains infinitely constant.
Right. And so let's back into that with just, the concept of dignity. This is a presentation about dignity. Dignity comes from a Latin word that means worthy, worth. It really is about having worth. So when you treat somebody with dignity, you're treating them like they're worth something. Now, that's not the same thing as respect. And I think you've probably heard managers say this, right? That, they need to respect me. They need to respect me because of my position. And a lot of this material is based on some work from a lady I'll introduce here in a moment, Donna Hicks. But Donna says, you don't owe people respect. That's a bridge too far. She says, Respect is something different. Respect, and I went and looked it up, it's from a Latin word that means to look back. In other words, you did something that, it's like spectacles, right? I had to give you a second look because you did something worth a second look. And what we're saying here is that respect is earned. You have to do something. You have to be something that obligates somebody to give you a second look. But everybody's born worth something. Everybody's born with dignity. They have worth just because they are a human being. That's the bedrock principle here that the rest of this material is built on. So
Right.
I'll pause there and give you a chance to react to that if you want to push back or take us a direction here.
Well, it's kind of interesting because you hear that phrase all the time, like we talked about, people want to be treated with dignity and respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase, now that I look at this, that phrase is pretty inaccurate.
Right.
So all people, the second half doesn't make sense. All people want to be treated with dignity, which is innate, right? They all have it, and we should treat them that way. And respect is, and it should say something like, and respect as it is earned, right?
Right.
There should be a slightly different wording to that statement. And so,
it's caused me to really think about, use of my language on that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and you see, people get respect because even the young kids, right? One of their peers will do something cool, and they just use that one word. The cool act will take place, and the kids will go, respect.
Yes.
So you hear them using this word in the proper context.
Yeah, the kids are all right. As it turns out.
You did the triple backflip off the dirt pile. Respect. That was amazing. 25 beer pong hits in a row. Respect. So in that field of endeavor, you earned it.
Right.
And the other half is, as a human being, you're just automatically worthy of dignity.
Yeah, and so often that second part gets just sort of brushed over. And Donna Hicks's point, again, quote her, she says, "We all want to be treated in ways that show we matter. And when we are not treated this way, we suffer." So when you don't honor the dignity of a human being, there's a debt there. There's something that was owed that has not been paid, and they know it. And by the way, it hurts. And I'll prove it to you with the silliest example I could think of. Do you know what movie this is from, Mike? I have some screenshots up here. It doesn't seem like your bag, but I'm going to go here anyway.
No, I have to admit, it's definitely not Casablanca.
You are correct. This is the Gene Kelly classic, Singing in the Rain. It is a phenomenal movie. And I have some screenshots up here from early on in the film. He's a silent movie star, and he's shown on the red carpet getting interviewed over the radio with his leading lady, who's this, gorgeous blonde. And she says, "Tell us your story." The radio host says, "Tell us your story." And he says, "Dignity, always dignity." And then he proceeds to tell, this yarn about how he was raised in the best schools and so on and so forth. And the whole time that he's saying all these things that sound so dignified, we're being shown pictures in a flashback of his coworker treating him like dirt. It turns out he was just a stunt double and got treated like crap by her. And then he became a leading man. And he gets treated awful. He has to, fly a plane and crash it through a barn, and she kicks him in the rear end and tosses him into the dirt pile, and all sorts of awful stuff happened to him. And, isn't that so often the way it is, right? Like all the things that sort of embarrass us and shame us and take away some of our dignity are the things that we just kind of cover up and pretend like didn't happen. But that was real. Like that really did happen. And that's, he looks serious now on the red carpet, but this is what happened then.
Right. Well, and you talk about, one of the ultimate compliments for a CEO, president, leader is that they treat the guy who sweeps the street or empties out the trash can the same way they treat the Pope or another president.
That's right. Yeah.
And so yeah, how do you treat people differently at different levels of status or organization?
Right.
And as a person, do people believe that some levels of hierarchy aren't worthy of as much dignity as others?
Right. Huge issue. And that's basically what Donna Hicks discovered in the real world. So I've got a headshot of Dr. Hicks. She's at Harvard, and her background was basically diplomatic efforts, conflict resolution in war zones. That's what she did. And she kept running up against brick walls, metaphorically speaking, because what she noticed was she could have the smartest people on both sides of this war. She could have them in the room. They both want peace. They both want a resolution to the problem. And they absolutely could not address the real concerns, because the phrase that Hicks uses is that there was a tsunami of emotion under the bargaining table. So they could be the right guy in the room, the right attitude, wanting to solve this problem, and they still couldn't address it because there was all this emotional baggage, hurt from dignity being violated on both sides. I mean, in some cases, the stuff she was dealing with, it was literally, rape during war and, atrocities. And that had to be addressed before you could move forward. Mm-hmm. So she has this really well-researched book, Leading with Dignity, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes. But basically another quote from that book: leaders who understand the power of treating people well will see their people thrive, and they will thrive right along with them, because when we honor others' dignity, we strengthen our own. And that's sort of the gist of this book, is that, the good news is the tsunami of emotion, that's the bad side. But there's something that happens on the good side when you do honor somebody's dignity and you do recognize that they're worth something as a human being. You get a chance to not just see them thrive, but it does something to your own dignity, and it's like this virtuous cycle. So that's the gist of her book. And Mike, I think you were there for the you did the lunch with her? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. We were there in the room at the same time. It was unbelievable, the stories that Donna tells about breakthroughs between people and obstacles between people that just didn't happen, and it was all based upon her belief that they weren't treating each other with dignity, and therefore no decisions could be made.
Yeah, they were at a total impasse until they did that. Yeah. And we should give a shout out to Ford Motor Company, because their people brought in Donna Hicks for a program that we're a part of called the Consumer Experience Movement, and it was just phenomenal material for us at the time. But a lot of my Ford dealers have found it useful. So that's a quick hat tip to where we got this material. To sort of begin to wrap up this introduction, we're going to go into some of the problems with dignity violations next. But just real quickly, we're going to kind of run through a list of what she calls the 10 elements of dignity. And her point here is that these are the things she kept seeing in culture after culture after culture. It didn't matter what continent she was working on. There might be more elements to dignity, but these were the 10 that she kept seeing over and over again. So maybe, man, for the sake of everybody not having to hear my voice over and over again, do you want to maybe, do you have your handout with you, Mike?
I do. Yes.
Maybe we should take these each, like, sort of go back and forth one at a time here, and just give you a chance to sort of, you can just read off what you see on the page there, but you can also add color commentary, which is what you're so good at on the fly. So I'm throwing this at you like, like you're a boss, and you are. So the first one is just the acceptance of somebody's identity. The idea is that, you don't treat them inferiorly. You don't treat them superiorly. You let them be who they really are, without fear of being judged by you. You interact with them without what she says, prejudice or bias, accepting, their characteristics that they see as at the core of their identities, whether it's, religion or race or what have you. So just accepting that person for who they are, so to speak.
Well, this seems to be one of the major topics of our time. In our culture is she goes on to say, we should be accepting of characteristics such as race, religion, gender, class, sexual orientation, age, disability. And so, this has become a huge talking point in our society now. And it's interesting because now we're trying to get man-made laws to align with this, law of dignity.
Yeah.
And so as long as the man-made laws are out of whack with the laws of dignity, then there's going to be this conflict.
Yeah. Well, and, you look at our, our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, and, that this idea of natural law that, God had sort of set up the universe to work this way. That's, over time, that's basically what happened. I read a civil rights leader call slavery America's birth defect. And, the idea was that, man, if you really read what we said about, what God had, what our Creator had endowed us with, all men are equal. And so all men, need to be treated respectfully, regardless of race. So we slowly began correcting things like that. What's interesting to me is, and you're going to see this in some of the other elements, but, both poles of some of the debates we're in right now will violate the dignity of the other pole by not acknowledging, one side's preferences versus one side's religious beliefs. We're going to have this fight show up in a lot of places. The idea here is that I just see you as a real person. I see who you are, who you say you are. So I'll shut up about that one. Do you want to talk about recognition?
Recognition. All right. So to validate others for their talents, hard work, thoughtfulness, and help. Be generous with praise, give credit to others for their contributions, ideas, and experience. And you and I, this is one of the main things that we talk about in our stores when we're dealing with managers and leaders.
No joke.
It is, and it's that thing. We did a whole, I think it was episode 26, in our podcast, where we just spent all our time on this concept of recognition.
Yep.
And one of the keys here is it's one of the things that all human beings desire, and it's one of the things that you really can't ask for.
Right.
Yeah, the moment if the wife comes to you and says, "Listen, I'd really appreciate it if you appreciate me more,"
Right.
and then the next time you appreciate her, she goes, "Are you just doing that because I told you to?" It's like, it's tainted now. It's not, and so we know that it's necessary. We know that it has the power to lift people up, and yet it's something that many people struggle with.
It's so true. So true. And I laugh, but only, laugh so you don't cry for people, that don't get this at all. The next one is acknowledgement, and it's in a similar vein, but here it's not, let me recognize you for something you did. It's let me just acknowledge that you said something. Let me just give you some attention, listen, hear, validate what I think I hear you say. And oh, by the way, respond to it. Right. Again, this is something you and I see show up all the time when we do employee surveys, culture surveys, and things like that. Something will get brought to management's attention. If management doesn't address that, that is why your people feel like their dignity has been violated. Now, they don't use those words. I get it. This is something that I'm inserting into the conversation, but you're making them feel like their opinion doesn't count. And that is something I've heard people say in the dealerships that I've called on, the clients that I've had, because, well, frankly, their opinion hasn't counted. It's never been acknowledged.
Oh yeah, no, I think you're spot on, and I think I've told you that I've reached this point in my life where if I'm talking to somebody and when I'm done talking, they don't acknowledge anything I just said, I just don't ever talk to them again.
Right. You told me that.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm moving on. Right? There are other people that will acknowledge what you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like
Right.
it. Just give me some sense that maybe you heard what I said. Disagreeing with it would be fine. But yeah, to just move on to some different point. Yeah, I got no time for that.
I think that's great. I think that's great.
Yeah. All right. So inclusion is our next one. So
Yeah.
make others feel that they belong at all levels of relationship, family, community, organization, and nation.
Yeah.
And I've heard this most of my life that people just want to feel like they're part of something.
Right.
And whether it's, we talked about this when we just talked about tribes. Am I part of the tribe, right? Am I one of those deadheads that just follow the Grateful Dead around, right? Am I part of that? Do I feel like I'm part of something? And we talk about that from work, from a retention of employees. If employees don't feel like they're part of the team, then our odds of keeping them are diminished greatly.
That is the first thing I thought of was, on the sales floor at a car dealership. It is such a bizarre profession. It has such a unique set of processes that have to be followed and lingo and so on and so forth. And if you are a new salesperson and you are standing at the sales tower, as we talk about, and things are going back and forth rapidly, and you don't have a clue what any of it means, and then the manager looks at you and says, "What do you need?" and then addresses you and then ignores you for a while, like, what does that mean? Well, in most situations, it probably means he's working on something at the computer to try to help you. What I so often see is that the sales manager never acknowledges what the heck he's doing to that person. He never includes them in the process so that A, they can learn, and B, they don't feel like they're just standing there being ignored while five other people come up and get help in the meantime. That is a great, simple little example of inclusion. You could just include them by bringing them up to speed on what's happening right now, because they don't know. Like, and unless you tell them, they're not going to know. So there's an example of inclusion. What's said here is just make them feel like they belong at all levels of the relationship, whether it's your family or community or organization, even the nation. But in our sense here, it's like, make them just feel like they know what the heck's going on in our company. Like that, even that would be good enough. Just let us know so we're not in the dark.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I've got a store and they had this seasoned salesperson with an Andy Rooney type personality.
Beautiful.
And eventually, the managers quit talking to him. The general manager quit talking to him. They told him he didn't need to come to the meetings anymore. He was so good at what he did. And he just became miserable. He was miserable already, and he became more miserable. And finally, the general manager, reached back out to him and brought him back into the loop and changed completely.
Did you ever wonder why I've been isolated completely?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. His eyebrows had grown together. He just had the unibrow. It was terrible. So, yeah, even though they thought they were doing the right thing by excluding him, it just made the situation worse.
I love that example. The next one is safety. And again, you sort of brought up, there's a physical separation of inclusion for this Andy Rooney character, but it was psychological too. It was emotional, and he had to be brought back into the fold. Safety's the same way. It, on one hand, yeah, physically, like, gosh, you got to make sure people, feel free from the possibility of bodily harm and free to raise their hand when they see a concern. But also there's the freedom to not feel, shamed or humiliated or experience retribution if they do raise their hand. And I'm sure you have too, but I've had workplaces that I've been a part of. People have died. Sometimes it was the stress level and people had heart attacks. Sometimes it was, there was a workplace accident and it just sort of fell on deaf ears, the concerns. And so these are real concerns on either front. And what I've noticed is that the safety thing, nobody's going to bring it up if they feel like it's not allowed to be brought up. If it's a shame situation, they just leave, or they're stuck there and are completely miserable and completely detached. And there's just this slow leak. The whole organization eventually just hemorrhages people and then money. And it never ends well until safety is addressed. It's such a, Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's such a primary thing. It has to be addressed. That has to be a part of the dignity conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and uncertainty comes into play here. And you and I have worked with organizations where if I'm not certain this is a landmine, I'm not going to step on it,
right.
Because there are certain times where I thought I was bringing up something very banal and the leader blew up.
That's right.
And it only takes me a couple of times before I go, I'm just really, I don't care how serious this situation is, I'm not bringing it up. Because I don't know if this person will lean in and help me try to fix it, or if they'll just explode. And so all of a sudden the leader no longer gets to hear about the true core issues that they have within their teams and organizations.
Totally insulated.
Let's talk about fairness. Treat people justly with equality in an even-handed way according to agreed on laws and rules. I like it where it says, treat people equally and even-handed. So we're going to, this was important enough to be redundant. We're going to say the same thing twice in the same sentence. And you see this all the time. And I tell leaders this all the time. People don't care what the rule is as long as it's applied to everyone fairly. The only time they get upset is when they perceive that some people have to follow the rule and others don't. Then, chaos ensues.
And we've talked about this in a previous episode, right? Mm-hmm. That if how many cars do I have to sell to break the rules around here? Mm-hmm. Well, if that's the case, then that needs to be a rule understood by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be applied to everybody.
We have to own that rule. We have to write it down, and we have to celebrate the heck out of it and encourage everyone to join that team.
Mm.
So yeah, and we see this all the time. Everybody needs to be here at 8:00, and you got two guys coming in at 8:15 every day. And from the point of view of the people who are coming in on time every day, it's just wildly frustrating.
Yeah. It's a slap in the face.
Yeah. You just don't. You're not doing anything. Why aren't you doing? And they wonder why the leader isn't addressing it.
Right.
And so, it's this little stuff like that where people perceive unfairness. And there again, it can be a perception of unfairness. It may not even be unfair, but I believe it is. So therefore, now I'm not doing my best work. I'm not fully engaged.
Great point. And why you don't is because they weren't including you, going back to inclusion, in the thought process behind that application. So it's a great example. Another little thing like that is this concept of independence. It says, empower people to act on their own behalf so that they feel in control of their lives and experience a sense of hope and possibility. And we all know this, if you're a customer, right? I've heard it said, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy, right? It's because they have some control over, their options and the menu of things that they might choose from and how they're going to pay and so on and so forth. But if you feel like you're being led down a road, it's not fun. And the same is true in a situation internally where you're being micromanaged or you feel like you're being manipulated to do things a certain way. You don't have that sense of independence to do the job your way, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah. We learned this from Dan Pink in his book Drive, where he talked about the of the three great motivators once you take money off the table is autonomy.
Right.
The people are there's guardrails, and within those guardrails, they're free to do it however they see fit, as long as it gets to the same result. And so, this autonomy thing we find is incredibly motivating to people.
Yeah, love that.
The next one is understanding. To believe what others think matters, give them the chance to explain their perspectives and express their points of view. Actively listen in order to understand them. And I've always said, I've always told my managers, there are no bad ideas. If a team member is sharing an idea, there's no bad ideas. And all they want is for their idea to get a fair hearing.
Yeah.
There's nobody on your team that believes you should be doing everything that they suggest.
Right.
And so, but they do want to know that the idea was heard, it was considered, and that and you close that feedback loop. You come back and go, we've looked at this about a dozen different ways. We've talked about it a couple of times, and I don't think we're going to be able to do it. And here's why.
Yeah.
They're fine with that, right? I mean, people are okay with that because they know that their idea got a fair hearing. It's when they don't believe anyone around them is listening that trouble ensues.
100%. And that is why this whole idea of reflective listening, repeating back what you think you heard your employee say or your manager say, is such a powerful tool, because, for people that are upset, it just automatically deflates them and brings them back to earth so that they can have that conversation with you. Until they feel heard, it's not going to happen. So you've got to make sure that you are understanding what they are trying to tell you. That's on us.
Well, I'm reading the wonderful book called The Advice Trap. And one of the concepts out of that is there's two, right? One of them is remain curious.
Yep.
And lead with curiosity. And that goes right to this. If you're curious, you're going to want to hear ideas. The other is be generous with your silence.
Yeah.
Ooh, be generous with your silence. So yeah, if the other person's telling you their idea, just be quiet. Don't talk. It's okay. Just listen. Yep. Let them flesh it out. And that idea may not be the $1 million idea, but because you listen to that idea, you're going to get the next one and the next one. And one of those could be the home run idea that you're looking for.
Yeah. And people just like to be heard. I mean, it's going to build your relationship with that person, period. They're going to think you're a better person just for having taken the time to listen.
Oh, anyway, yeah. Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
That guy's a great leader.
Right.
He listens to me.
All right. Two more. Benefit of the doubt, treating people as if they are trustworthy. She says, start with the premise that others have good motives and are acting with integrity. And we've talked about this many times on the podcast. We'll probably need to link to the episode on choosing trust. But that's the principle here, is that, if I want to gain somebody's trust, I better give them trust. And in this instance, it's giving them the trust that I assume they have positive intentions. Let me just go with that first. And, we'll learn more as time goes on, as we honor these other dignity traits, such as recognition and understanding. But let's just assume right off the get-go that they're not, axe murderers trying to, vandalize our entire corporation, that there must be a point here that I'm missing, and I need to hear the story.
Well, yeah, the Captain Mike Abrashoff, who wrote the book It's Your Ship, had the chance to listen to him the other day, and he was talking about if you're disappointed in what your team did, you're disappointed in what a team member did, the first thing that he reminded himself to think was, let's assume they wanted to do a good job.
Right.
And then let's figure out what kept that from happening. And many times, to his dismay, what he figured out was it was him.
Right. Exactly.
Me as the leader didn't give clear enough instructions. I didn't provide enough resources. I didn't give enough there wasn't, the training wasn't adequate. Right? There was all these things that, but the first assumption is, okay, that didn't go well, but let's assume they wanted to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
And then let's figure out, we'll dissect it and figure out what went wrong then.
I mean, the company hired the guy after all. There's got to be something that we saw.
Yeah, we kept him. We gave him the task, or
right.
We gave her the job assignment. So we obviously thought there was potential there.
Right.
So yeah, I think that one's amazing.
I love that.
The last one's interesting because, and I think there's a reason it's number 10 is accountability. It says, take responsibility for your actions, apologize if you have violated another person's dignity. So basically what this one is saying, if you don't do any of those, one or more of those 9 things that we just talked about,
right,
you have to own it.
Yep.
This is on you, man. So if you don't give people the benefit of the doubt, if you don't listen, if you don't provide a safe environment, if you don't include them, right? If you don't acknowledge them, you don't recognize people, and you don't accept their identity, then rule number 10 is own it. Just say it. Make a commitment to change those behaviors. Make a commitment to acknowledge that, hey, in that last interaction, I didn't do a very good job at this, and here's what I'm going to do differently going forward.
You are so right, and put a pin on that, everybody, because we're going to come back to that as we go through the series of what do you do to repair dignity. Meanwhile, now that you've heard the 10 elements of dignity, let me give you just a word picture to sort of close us out on of the Ritz-Carlton. And I've heard Horst Schulze, I guess he was the first president, and he launched the first 30 or so Ritz-Carltons, I think is how it worked. He was the one who came in to do the onboarding. I believe he is Austrian, maybe German. I think he's Austrian. And he would come in this 3-piece suit and talk to a room full of hourly workers who are about to become, bellboys and maids and whatever outdated terms we're not allowed to use anymore. And he would come in and work with these folks wearing his 3-piece suit. And the beginning of the presentation, at the beginning of the orientation, was, I need you folks to understand that you are, ladies and gentlemen, about to go serve ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. The idea being that, of course, we're going to serve these people, but we're going to do it from a position of confidence in our own worth, that we're bringing something to them that is of value. And I'm sure you've probably heard stories too, Mike, but my favorite Ritz-Carlton story, I had a car dealer I used to work with, and his partner and the partner's wife were all going to meet up at a Ritz-Carlton and have a night on the town. And he got to his room, and they were already there. The couple were already there. And so he was having a staff member take his bags up to his room, and he was on the phone trying to figure out where they were at. And this employee of Ritz-Carlton overheard it. And he said, do you need directions can I help you get to, and it was a store, a clothing store. He said, oh, I'm sure I can figure it out. And he goes, no, I can help. He walked down a flight of stairs, off property, across the street and up a block to take this customer to the entrance of another business. And that is something that this customer is still talking about. The car dealer years later was telling me this story, right? Now, you don't do that if you think, I'm just going to keep out of sight, out of mind, and I'm just going to do my job and get out of this guy's way. No, I can help this guy. In fact, I'm going to help this guy because I'm worth something. I can provide value for this person. I think that's a little picture. That's a little window of the kinds of blessings your organization goes through when you start honoring people's dignity and treating them like they're worth something. They start treating other people like they're worth something. Mm-hmm. So that's a picture.
Oh, no. And the stories of the Ritz-Carlton treating their employees like they treat their guests.
Yeah.
As an employee of the Ritz-Carlton, if I leave my shoes outside my locker when I come back the next morning to go to work, they've been polished and shined. Just like a customer, a client leaves their shoes outside the room, they'll be polished and shined. Right? Their uniforms are pressed and cleaned. They eat the same food that the guests eat. And so you've got this incredible role modeling of, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to treat everyone like ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And so whether you're the housekeeper or you're the president or GM of that particular hotel, it's all the same.
Well, we hope that's a beautiful picture to end on, and we're going to come back to sort of the violations of dignity in the next episode. But meanwhile, we just want to leave you with this thought of, which elements of dignity do you honor at work, and how do you do that? Really think about, out of those 10 elements, what are the things you're doing actively in your organization to honor the dignity of your employees and perhaps even your customers? That's going to give us a little bit of a baseline to work on, and we'll build on that over the next couple episodes.
Awesome. Speaking of treating people with dignity, let's hear what our announcer has to say about us.
I guess we could include him.
Yeah, we probably should. And let's give him some recognition because he works for free.
That's very true.
And that's a wrap. It doesn't take a genius. The blog dedicated to reducing the irreducible. Next time, prime numbers. What makes them so special? Join us then, and thanks for listening.
That's good enough.